Perfect. Let's call roll and then do the Pledge of Allegiance, if you don't mind.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Just a friendly reminder to mute yourself when you are not speaking. If you are a member of the public and wish to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press *9 if you are participating telephonically. And Directors Bernasconi? Absent. Burris?
Present.
Frericks? Absent. Stallard?
Did you say Stallard?
Stollard?
Present.
Vice Chair Middleton?
Here.
Vice Chair Thomas? Absent. And Chair Kozlowski?
Here.
Thank you.
Everybody will please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we are officially adjourned. Okay. Public communication. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak on an item that is not currently on the agenda?
We do not have any public communications.
Okay, fantastic. Well, then I will entertain a motion or commentary on the consent calendar from board members.
Stallard moves the consent calendar, Mr. Chair.
For a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could you please call the roll?
Yes. Directors Bernasconi? Absent. Burris?
Yes.
Frericks? Absent. Stallard?
Yes.
Vice Chair Middleton?
Yes.
Vice Chair Thomas is absent, and Chair Kozlowski.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Okay, would you please call the first item, Madam Clerk?
Yes. Action item number 4, approve 2023 SACOG meeting schedule presented by Lynette.
Good morning, committee members. I'm joining you virtually this morning. The item before you is the proposed meeting schedule for 2023. I know it's October, but we're thinking about that already. As stated in the staff report, we're proposing to hold our meetings on our typical meeting dates where possible. And our typical meeting dates, as a reminder, is our board meetings on the 3rd Thursday of each month, the Policy and Innovation Committee meeting typically the 1st Monday of each month, and then the Transportation and Land Use and Natural Resources Committees on the 1st Thursday of each month. So an exception to our typical meeting schedule next year will be November. And the meeting we propose would be 1 week earlier due to a conflict with the California State Association of Counties annual conference. Additionally, our September meeting does conflict with the League of California Cities annual conference. We're not able to move our meeting up 1 week earlier because then we would have a conflict with the Greater Sacramento Economic Council board meeting, and we share many board members with that agency. And if we move our meeting back 1 week, then we would have a conflict with the Air Resources Board, and we again share many board members with that agency. So what we're proposing is to keep our meeting in September on our typical date. And we understand that the League of California Cities Conference is being held at the Convention Center, which is conveniently across the street from us. And so we would hope that possibly we could ask our members to walk across the street for our action items and our action calendar, or even call in. So it's not the best scenario, but it's what we're hoping is a compromise. And then also our exceptions to our typical meetings include our Policy and Innovation Committee meetings for April, May, September, November, and December. And those would just either be the 1st Monday or the 2nd Monday as stated in the calendar. That's because we have Columbus Day on one of those Mondays and then Labor Day on another. So we would move that up accordingly, or to meet our agenda schedule for our packet mail outs.
We could meet on those holidays and get time and a half.
Yeah, we could, but we probably wouldn't get a quorum. Yeah. And then also like this year in 2022, we propose holding a strategic planning committee meeting each quarter to check in on agency items. And then lastly, just as a reminder, our incoming board chair would have the option and discretion to change up the committee schedule or structure, excuse me. For instance, maybe adding or removing a committee, and that would change the meeting schedule accordingly. So happy to take any questions or if you want to share any concerns. And then we're also looking for a motion today to recommend approval of this to the full board, and they'll hear the same presentation.
Seems like a very thoughtful plan. Thank you, Lynette. Any questions from board members? All right, I'll entertain a motion then, or is there public comment?
We do not have any public comment for this item.
Oh, I don't know. I think the dog had a comment there, didn't he, Lynette?
I'm sorry, she may have, she's in agreement.
It's, I'll take that as a motion. I'll make the motion on her
Curtis
behalf.
County. Okay, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of item number 4. Please call the roll.
Okay.
Dogs are
Directors-
welcome at our meetings.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Directors Bernasconi,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Frericks is absent. Stallard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Middleton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Thomas is absent, and Chair Kozlowski.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
All right, excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, action item number 5, approve amendment number 2 to the budget and overall work program for fiscal year 2022-2023.
And I'll be presenting this item today. Good morning. So this is our first formal amendment to our budget and OWP, but our second of the year. We are going to be adjusting some assumed carryovers as we finished our closeout of the last fiscal year. Some things are going up, some things are going down, but the net effect is a 1.4% decrease to the operating budget, reflecting some expenses that that were taken care of before the year closed out, and a 1.6% increase to the board and advocacy budget, reflecting some small adjustments. Overall, it's still a balanced budget with total revenues and expenditures of $43.2 million. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, excellent. Questions, board members? Looks like we're hitting our target of balanced with some modest modifications to past things. Okay, seeing none at the moment. Any public comment?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, well, I will entertain a motion if anybody would like to make it.
Burris moves approval.
Second, Bernasconi.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item number 5.
All right, Directors Bernasconi,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Frericks is absent. Stallard?
Aye.
Vice Chair Middleton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Thomas is absent, and Chair Kozlowski.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. All right, and then action item number 6, award contracts for legal services.
Thank you. I'll be presenting this again. So this item originally started at this committee back in June when the committee and the board recommended and approved releasing an RFP for legal services. Over the summer, we put out a request for proposals, and we were fortunate to receive 9 different law firms that were interested in doing business with SACOG. Across 5 different categories, we had at least 3 proposals in each category. And the net result is that we have a proposal for awarding to 3 firms. Best and Krieger applied in multiple categories, and we're recommending them to serve as our general counsel. And Mike Maurer, who's been serving as interim general counsel, is who the firm is proposing would still serve as SACOG's general counsel. Best and Krieger is also recommended to serve as labor and employment counsel. This is a role that Sloan Sakai had previously played for SACOG. And Best and Krieger would also be serving as litigation counsel. Previously, SACOG didn't have dedicated litigation counsel, and so this is an on-call service that we'll now have for that specialized practice. The second firm we're recommending to award to is Sloan Sakai, Young and Wong, who currently serves as our contracts counsel. They'd continue to serve in that role. And then finally, we're recommending Thomas Law Group serve as our environmental counsel. They've served us on the last several environmental impact reports for SACOG's long-range plan, and this would be an on-call service where they'd be available to us. Since the staff report was published, I do want to note that Thomas Law Group has announced that they are merging with the firm of Downey Brand in Sacramento. We'd still have all the same attorneys at the same rates that they proposed on, and the merger would take effect on January 1st. And so we'd still award to Thomas Law in anticipation of them then being called Downey Brand effective January 1st. So be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
One question, had Downey Brand served in any capacity for us in the past?
So we have not had, we've contracted with Downey Brand for some special counsel services, but they were not a firm that proposed in this round, and they haven't had an ongoing relationship with SACOG.
Okay, yeah, just curious. All right. Okay, board directors, any questions? I'll say thank you to those of you that were involved in the interview process. I know Vice Chair Middleton was definitely part of interviewing a number of these firms, and lots of the staff was involved, and other directors, myself included. So thank you for everybody's work on that. And Michael Maurer, we're delighted to have you guys continue. I assume, assuming somebody makes a motion here in a moment. Any public comment?
We do not have any public comment for this item.
Okay, great. Well, directors, I'll entertain a motion if somebody's willing to make it.
Burris moves approval.
Second, Middleton.
Excellent. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item number 6. Would you please call the roll?
Yes, Directors Bernasconi,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Frericks is absent. Stallard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Middleton,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Thomas is absent, and Chair Kozlowski.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Now I will say thank you, Michael, and congratulations. Happy to continue working with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll just add we're delighted as well.
Excellent. All right. Item number 7.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. This is an extension of the item I brought last month on our blueprint outreach. Specifically a little bit of a change. We had previously thought that one of the ways that we were going to conduct the outreach was through community-based organizations. And while that remains consistent, we found a better way to do that, we think. Previously, we had proposed putting out a request for qualifications, which would allow us to basically certify as many community-based organizations as we could to then be able to work with them into the future. And functionally, what happens with that is it's a little bit onerous on staff to maintain that, and then have to go out for each of those occurrences out for a second call for bids. It's a fair amount of bureaucracy that we're hoping to avoid now by moving to this process using Senate Bill 1 funds, which are specifically allowed for this type of small grant program. So moving it to a grant program allows us to reduce the amount of paperwork that we need to manage, as well as the community-based organizations. And I think also it shifts the power dynamic of it a little bit, where they're allowed to propose what they want to do and how they want to do it in terms of the outreach, which I think gets to Director Stollard's comments before in terms of really pushing to share the ownership of this work, of the blueprint, what it means to the region, what it means to these individual groups and their members. So I think that it is a positive thing all the way around, but because it is a shift and because it's a grant program, we wanted to come back with an action item to recognize that. So that's all that I needed or wanted to share on that. We are seeking a recommendation from this committee to the board to approve this program.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I like the idea. Thank you. I'll move the action and after public comment.
All right. Questions from directors about this? Okay, AJ, I will renew one question that I had. What is the community-based organizations that more specifically that you're hoping to attract? And how, you know, it just as an example, I guess. Because I feel like that remains in some ways a euphemism, because it doesn't, nobody goes out and calls themselves a community-based organization. They just are one. So I'm just wondering who it is we're after.
Yeah,
So
functionally, I think,
the group of us.
yeah, functionally, I think the bar is typically nonprofits. However, I think that'll vary widely between across the region. So the urban core might attract more of larger organizations, whether it's a civic thread where they really work in policy areas across the area, or all the way to ethnic chambers or community groups that like focus on their neighborhood. Sometimes a neighborhood association will rise to that level.
Would you expect somebody like Sarah to be one that would join in on this, Save the American River Association group?
Potentially, sure.
They're small but very active, and certainly would maybe be interested in this.
Certainly.
Okay. All right, just curious.
The original blueprint attracted both Sacramento Metro Chamber, Valley Vision, Breathe California, and I think there was one ethnic chamber involved. So, you know, I think this is a great way to do it, AJ. Thank you for being responsive to my comment last time.
Yeah, good.
Sure,
Thank you, Director Stollard.
Chair Kozlowski, if I could, I think I want to connect this to the next item on the Racial Equity Action Plan, right? And I mean, part of this is trying to figure out how do we kind of get outside the walls of our agency and really begin to develop stronger and deeper working relationships with a lot of our community groups. I will say, having worked in the San Francisco Bay Area for a long time, there's almost an embarrassment of riches in the Bay Area for all kinds of reasons. You turn around and run into a nonprofit. That's not to say they've got it all figured out, but I think one thing we recognize here and we're mindful of is actually limited capacity, and we don't want to overwhelm some of our nonprofits. The other thing I would say, again, just as a sort of a preview, if you will, is, well, yeah, so we don't want to overwhelm our nonprofits. We want to develop, and we think this is one example, right, of a more kind of streamlined way to do that. Even if we work on the topics of, say, transportation and land use and housing, it isn't that there will just be nonprofits in those sectors. It's really about organizations that know their communities, that know their constituents, that know residents' needs and challenges. So they could be a faith-based organization. They could be a soup kitchen. They could be an environmental, right? So, but it's a fair question. And I think one of the things I start thinking of as you've said this a few times now, Chair Kozlowski, is just making sure that we have our own kind of inventory. And so a lot more to come on this, including the next item.
Okay, well, there's a couple that come to mind in Folsom that are kind of unique, and that's the Historic District Residents Association, HEFRA, and the Historic District, the Business Association. So we have both for our cute little downtown. So either one of them would be a good add to the mix. Excellent. Okay, is there any public comment on this item?
We do not have any public comment for this item.
Okay, excellent. I think we already have a motion on the table by Director Stollard and other commentary, Director.
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to respectfully suggest that we should really focus on region-wide groups that have a focus region-wide. I don't know how we could handle it if we had, nonprofits in all of our jurisdictions or focused on individual jurisdictions. I don't know if that would be, the best thing in terms of creating a region-wide plan. So that's my little 2 cents there, dude.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that we overcomplicate things, just that if we do outreach, we may end up with organizations that have pretty narrow parochial interests.
Okay, I renew my motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second by Middleton.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item number 7.
All right, I'm going to call roll. Directors Bernasconi,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Frericks is absent. Stallard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Middleton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Thomas is absent, and Chair Kozlowski.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 8, adopt racial equity action plan, and Casey Lazan.
Yes,
You are
good morning, Chair Kozlowski and members of the committee. I am here today to ask, after having just concluded the Race Equity Inclusion Working Groups meeting on Friday, where they endorsed this racial equity action plan to you with one minor change, which I will get to. I'm here to ask you to recommend this to the SACOG board for adoption. And before we get into that, I want to just let you know where we have been since you last saw this action plan, and also to share with you how all of the input we've received has translated into what is in your packet for your consideration today. So we did have the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group really working on this document for pretty much all of their meetings this year after the board adopted the Racial Equity Statement of Change and Commitment back in February. A lot of listening and learning has taken place, both with the individual working group members, the working group as a whole, and our external stakeholders, which I had shared with you in our prior presentation of this item. After taking this, the working draft action plan through all of the board committees and seeking feedback from the stakeholders who had originally given us input, the draft that you have before you was developed. I want to recognize Shanice Alexander, who is standing by for any questions on the process. She is with Venture with Purpose. She's been our equity consultant and guide and advisor. So she worked with several staff teams. I have counted 30 staff members at FACOG have had some sort of direct role in the creating the clearer, more specific, actionable goals and objectives that you see before you, and including the actions and the timing, measures and indicators. And that is because the comments that we received back from all of your colleagues and board committees, from all of our stakeholders, these comments were additive comments. They were looking for clarification, specificity to show how SACOG is going to operationalize. So in doing that, we don't have deletions of goals. We might have some objectives that were consolidated because they were actually very similar. But this, we hope, as you looked through it, is just a much more clear and tangible description of how SACOG will follow through on its racial equity statement of change and commitment. And the information that you see within this, the goals and objectives in the plan, they establish initial priorities for SACOG, what the organization can do to implement the statement the board adopted. We know that these may change and evolve over time, and the action plan describes really the process for how that will happen. The board, if the board adopts this plan, they are really saying these are our goals and objectives, and the actions that flow out of those objectives and the timeline and the measures and indicators, they all have a cycle of planning, implementation, and evaluation that will come back through to the board, to our stakeholders, so that we can assess over time how we are doing, and if any changes need to be made, that staff would be proposing where any goals or objectives might need to be modified. Speaking of modifications, I mentioned at the top, there was a small change. The Race Equity Inclusion Working Group did ask for board practices, Goal 1, Objective A. And if you are following along, it's page 7 in the plan where we have that objective laid out. It says agendize at least 3 board workshops a year from speakers. And what they said was, you know what, let's pull that down to 2. We want to make sure it has impact and it's not watered down. So it's changed from 3 to 2 is what they are suggesting. But other than that, they have moved it forward wholly to you. And with that, I am happy to pause and see if there are any questions, any additional feedback, and we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Casey. This is remarkable work, and a lot of effort went into it, and it's impressive in every way. And it's fantastic, the commitment that everyone has made to this, and I really look forward to pressing ahead on these practices and goals. I'm happy to take any commentary from directors on this item at this point. Commentary or questions? Okay, do we have any public comment?
We do not have any public comment for this item.
Okay, well then, barring other questions or comments, we are looking for a motion to recommend approval of this plan with that minor adjustment to the full board.
Move approval, Middleton.
Stallard will second.
Okay, excellent. We have a motion and a second for approval of this item. Please call the roll.
All right, Directors Bernasconi,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Frericks is absent. Stallard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Middleton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Thomas is absent, and Chair Kozlowski.
Is this where we can do a graded yes or no? Enthusiastic yes.
Well, enthusiastically, the motion carries.
Don't put your chairmanship in jeopardy.
Very good. Okay, we are on to item 9, SACOG strategic plan. Mr. Corliss.
Yeah, Chair Kozlowski and members of the committee, appreciate the approval of the last item, and you've got 2 pretty major plans on your agenda this morning, and this is the second one. As I think you all know, but just as a reminder, in my mind, we've really been doing strategic planning here at SACOG for the last few years. That was really kind of brought into focus at the April board retreat in Clarksburg, where we did a deep dive on the triple bottom line. As we say in the staff memo here as a background, we have engaged Third Plateau Social Impact Strategies. They interviewed many of you on the board. They did some listening sessions, and we've had a lot of engagement on this update and revision to our agency's strategic plan. In August at committees, we presented to you options for a vision statement, which the agency has never had, and a couple of mission statements that were some revisions to the existing mission statement. You weighed in on those in your August committees. On August 29th, the Strategic Planning Committee got to take a look at and discuss the full strategic plan of the version of which an amended version of which you have in your packet. Gave a lot of good feedback at that meeting on August 29th. At the full board meeting, September 15th, we had another information item where there was some further review and some input. And from that, you have in your packet here a red line version and a draft final strategic plan for the agency. So we appreciate, again, on this, a lot of input over the course of this year and the last couple of years, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, directors, questions? Okay, any public comment?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay. All right. Well, at the risk of this being anticlimactic, it's good work, and we are pressing ahead and delighted to have this on our agenda and make these recommendations. So I will entertain a motion unless there's other comments that people would like to make.
Burris moves approval.
Bernasconi, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for item number 9.
All right, Directors Bernasconi,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Frerichs is absent. Stallard?
Yes.
Vice Chair Middleton?
Yes.
Vice Chair Thomas is absent and Chair Kozlowski.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Excellent. Okay, information item number 10, Mega Region Working Group Meeting Summary. Mr. Holtzen.
Good morning. Just a couple of short highlights. We had our last Mega Region Working Group meeting of the year just a couple Fridays ago on September 23rd. The theme of that meeting was largely around electrification and zero emission vehicle deployment, technology, infrastructure deployment. We had a short presentation that MTC led on just some of the initiatives that are happening in each of our regions. San Joaquin is currently doing a vision plan for alternative fuels, looking at siting largely for medium and heavy duty, but also passenger vehicles. They're looking at siting refueling, recharging stations for freight, as well as some of their major roadways, looking more for electric charging stations for light duty passenger vehicles. Also highlighted Stockton's work on some EV car sharing as well as e-bike sharing programs. And then highlighted in our region, the partnership we have with SMUD, the Air District, and RT to look at ZEV deployment strategies, both hydrogen and electrification. That's some work we started with them for a while. We had last summer, I think, is when we initiated a kind of a fuller deployment strategy. We had a board lunch just a couple of months ago, highlighting that work. And it'll be coming back. I think we're coming to Lunar next month, and then also to the board. There'll be some more information on the more recent work we've done in that area. And then the main show for that meeting was a panel discussion on electrification challenges and barriers. And we had representatives from PG&E, Darren Klein from PG&E, Diane Wen, who's the executive director for San Joaquin. She was there to give more of a local government and regional government perspective. Craig Siegel is from the California Air Resources Board, giving his state perspective. And then Tim Taylor, who's formerly with our Sacramento Metropolitan Air District, now is executive director of the SAC Clean Cities Initiative. So they talked through a lot of the kind of, as they see it, challenges and barriers. One of the takeaways that I heard pretty loud and clear was, electrification is great, particularly in the light duty passenger vehicle space, but we need to make sure we're paying attention and planning for other alternative fuels like hydrogen in that medium duty, heavy duty space. That was the kind of the highlights of that meeting. Next year, we're going into our fourth year of this. And SACOG is taking over as the lead agency. It was MTC this year. We kicked it off in the first year of this. So we'll be taking over again next year. We will have the chair position, and then San Joaquin COG will have the vice chair position. And we're looking at at least 3 meetings, and then ideally, hopefully we can have one in person next year. So with that, I just wanted to make sure I left a little space. Chair, if you have anything to say, or James as well, if you had anything that you wanted to add to the debrief.
Yeah, thank you very much. Did you have things that you'd like to add to that, James?
I wanted to give a little look ahead to next year, but if you wanted to.
Yeah, so the specific reason that I asked to be part of the Mega Region Working Group delegation from SACOG was this particular topic, because it's of increasing interest to me personally, and only because I am drawn to complex problems, and the zero emission vehicle challenge, converting to zero emission vehicles, has a lot of tentacles, a lot more than 8 on an octopus. And I think SACOG, this is a perfect place for SACOG to serve in a collector and an advisory role to all of our individual communities on incentive programs and on strategies on how to locate different types of charging or fueling stations that will be needed in the future, so that we don't trip over each other, and so that when it comes time to perhaps negotiate with certain types of property owners, we do it collectively as a region rather than onesie twosie like has happened in the past with cell phone towers, for instance, so that we get a little bit better leverage at the outset of that transition rather than over time. You know, just to expand a little bit on what Clint had pointed out, there are, you know, the two big categories. There's the, you know, light vehicles that we all drive and, you know, small business owners drive to move their plumbing gear around from place to place. And then there are heavy over the road vehicles. And then there are, that has a subcategory of like construction and farm equipment and all kinds of heavy vehicles that mostly currently run on diesel or compressed natural gas. Those two groups have entirely different needs. The locations that they need to have charging or fueling are entirely different. And then when you get to the light vehicle category, there are all different types of users. And right now there's a preponderance of people that are in a, let's call it a little higher socioeconomic category that have electric vehicles that mostly they can charge at home. But they have a need for charging at highway stops if they're taking a longer trip with those vehicles. But on a day-to-day basis, they don't need charging. And then there's the idea of there being shared vehicles that will need a home base that somebody moves them to and from as they use them. So there's a whole variety of things that need to be sorted out. And, you know, there's, I think it's, I want to leave it to the staff to do the sorting out, but I personally am super interested in this. So I'm happy to, you know, be the extra flunky that writes stuff on the whiteboards if you ever need that. So anyway, I just think this is an area where we are at the right place at the right time, and we've assembled the right regional group of people to be able to have a major impact on what the future looks like. And it's a small thing, but it's a small piece of a giant puzzle, but it's a super complex one to solve in an orderly fashion. So I'm very excited about this going forward, and would like to see us continue to work carefully and diligently and rapidly on it.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Kozlowski. And as Clint was mentioning, you know, we were successful in getting a grant to develop a strategy for the mega region on heavy duty sort of transition of the multiple challenges you mentioned. And I know Director Burris has an interest in this as well. But figuring out how do we transition heavy duty to zero emission, and how do we do it not on the one-off? Hey, let's get a single hydrogen fueling facility and hope that everybody will just start buying hydrogen trucks, right? But actually looking at a true network, because the mega region is at the very least, it's probably the smallest geography that a lot of those heavy duty trucks are moving, and we needed a coordinated strategy, and we need to get ahead of the curve, frankly, before we find in the not too distant future that we're going to have to be required to make this transition. I think we want to be ahead of that transition and actually take advantage of it. Yeah. As a preview, just to go ahead, Director Stallard.
I was just going to say too, a huge percentage of people in our region live in multiple family housing. And if we're going to have all electric vehicles, how do people who live in a unit with like 200 units or 100 units, do they pull into a station and stay for a while and have to move it to get their charge? I mean, I think that's a complex problem. I'm interested in seeing how that problem is going to get solved. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I appreciate that, Dr. Stoller. And what I would say is that adding to I appreciate Chair Kozlowski, you're kind of, hey, look, SACOG's in a great position on this. Of the many challenges we have is that multiple public agencies own multiple slices of it. Mm-hmm. I think we're beginning to, and I think when we had a lunch session for you not too long ago with SMUD and the Sacramento Air Quality Management District and Sacramento Regional Transit, right? So just within the Sacramento County footprint, I can tell you that our four agencies are working really closely together and are doing quite a bit of work on that, but obviously that doesn't extend to the broader 6-county footprint. So we alone are not going to necessarily solve this or lead on it, but we know we have an important role to play. Yeah. Just in terms of the preview, I wanted to talk a little, Clint mentioned we're chairing next year on the board calendar for 23. You've got your, and there will be, again, 4 board members serving in the role for SACOG on the Mega Region Working Group. Open to ideas on exactly what we might focus on next year, but I think for us, advocacy, maybe also as a segue to your final item here for information. There is more money available right now, actually for electrification and zero emission, but also for intercity passenger rail. And those are some of the key projects that we've got coming to this region the next couple of years. We've got the ACE train coming to Sacramento, North Sacramento, and the airport. We have third track Capital Corridor up to Roseville and Auburn. PCTPA is looking at the feasibility of going across the summit up to Truckee and over to Reno. And we have a very, I think, fascinating effort underway in the north of our region, looking at extending the San Joaquin Rail service up to Marysville and Chico. And we've never had more passenger rail money ever available. It is there for the taking between the state budget deal and the TIRCIP awards the Transit Intercity Rail funding at the state level, and of course the federal level with a bipartisan infrastructure law. More money available in 2023 than we've ever seen. So it is ours for the taking. I think we are. I firmly believe that this work is really, really well timed for us to be taking advantage of that. And so we obviously have cap to cap, and we have opportunities next year in DC. I put the placeholder out there. If your city or your chamber or you are going back to DC on your own trips next year, please think about this. Help us think about these opportunities so that we can hit our federal representatives repeatedly with this message. When I was in Cap to Cap in May, the mega region work was one of the most exciting things from the FRA and members of Congress and our delegation back there. They really wanted to know about it, and they were really enthusiastic that we were kind of thinking outside the region, if you will. So,
excellent. That is fantastic. Tom, I think part of your multi-family charging solution is partnering with somebody like Walmart or Target and having dedicated charging in the outlying parts of their parking lots, all of them, so that everybody knows that you can always go there, and most people find themselves there anyway at certain points of the week or the month. So
that's fine.
Stuff like
Of
that.
course, we do rapid charging, then you can just stay half an hour like.
Yeah, precisely. But remains to see how that all shakes out.
I use Tesla charging. It's 50 cents a kilowatt hour or whatever, as opposed to 17 or 19 cents at home. So it's expensive too.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the biggest piece of the puzzle ultimately is, we're lucky to have a partner like SMUD, who, has a more manageable territory to deal with. Mm-hmm. But the moving of electricity from place to place and getting enough of it in the right place is a real network challenge that they've got to take on. But I think that, Sacramento area has been a leader on a lot of different things over time. And we can standardize terms, we can make good recommendations, we can work collectively so that as these networks build out, they use the model that we help to form. So I think that's why I think we're in the right place at the right time with the right partners, honestly, because our other regional agencies are excellent to work with on.
I might also say, I feel in hindsight, I think it was a mistake to offer free charging for so long. People are used to it. And the fact is, it didn't incentivize the private sector at all. So we really have to get over free charging so that people are used to paying, and then the private sector will get in there. I do not understand why gas stations haven't set up electric charging stations as a transition opportunity for them.
Yes, indeed. Agreed. Any other questions or comments from directors? My apologies for stringing this one out to indulge my own interest.
It's a free
country. Let's move on to item number 11. Thank you.
Good morning, committee members. Sabrina Bradbury, SACOG staff here. Let me just share my screen. I have a short PowerPoint for my update today. All right, so I'm going to give a quick overview of some state legislation that was signed on bills that we took support positions on. And then I'll give a federal advocacy update and touch on some grant coordination work. There were 5 out of the 7 bills on which we took a support position that the governor has signed. So I'll run through those, but I did want to highlight that there were a number of housing and infill development related bills that were signed last week. We're still making our way through that long list and analyzing those bills. So we'll come back to you next month with a deeper dive on some of those. There, just to touch on a couple, there's AB 2011, a WICS bill, which created a ministerial streamlined approval process for 100% affordable housing projects in commercial zones and for mixed income housing projects along commercial corridors. And then, as Chair Kozlowski mentioned, there's also AB 2097, a Friedman bill that eliminates minimum parking requirements on specified residential, commercial, and other developments that are located within a half mile of public transit. So we'll come back with more information on those and other bills, but for the bills that we took a support position on, we have AB 2019, which codifies a small business goal for state procurement and proposes a number of actions to enhance the ability and commitment of state agencies to include diverse business owners and disabled veteran business enterprises in state contracting. This bill was sponsored by the Asian Chamber of Commerce, who reached out to us for support. And then AB 2622 is a bill that extends partial sales and use tax law exemption that was established with AB 784 for specified zero emission technology on transit buses until 2026. So specifically for zero emission technology for transit buses that are sold to public agencies that provide transit services to the public. So this bill could save up to $50,000 per vehicle for those public agencies that are purchasing those. Then we have SB 922, which expands some California Environmental Quality Act exemptions for specified transit, bicycle, and pedestrian projects. And it extends those exemptions from 2023 through 2030. It also expands the exemption to apply to active transportation plans and pedestrian plans. And this is a follow-up bill to one that we supported a couple of years ago that those provisions were going to sunset in 2023. So this expands that through 2030. And then we have SB 942, which allows transit agencies to use the low carbon transit operations program known as LCTOP funding for free and reduced fare transit programs to continue to use LCTOP funding to maintain those programs on an ongoing basis without any restriction on length of time. Previously, these could only be run as pilot programs, and then there were limited funding opportunities to continue those programs. It does require the transit agencies to submit an additional allocation request for the program after 3 fiscal years. So they just renew that authorization. And then finally, we have SCA 2, which would be a constitutional amendment to repeal Article 34 of the California Constitution. And Article 34 requires cities and counties to get voters' approval before any publicly funded low rent housing can be built. So this would be a repeal of that requirement, and it will go on as a ballot measure for a statewide election. I'll pause briefly there and see if there's any questions on those bills. Okay. With that, I'll move on to the federal advocacy update. The president signed a continuing resolution for federal funding to keep agencies open through mid-December. The next steps there are going to be really dependent on how elections roll out, and then they'll continue budget discussions after that. And we're continuing to work with our lobbyists to advocate for funding for Green Means Go, both through these budget discussions, but also looking at grant guidelines and programs where we could advocate to ensure that we are competitive for securing more funding for Green Means Go. And then on grant coordination, we are taking a look at all of the competitive grant rounds that have either recently been released or soon to be released to generate some ideas and solicit ideas for regional grant applications. And want to continue working with members and partners to see where there's interest in applying to those various grant programs. James mentioned a few ideas related to rail projects on our mega region list of projects. We want to see if we can help pull together some regional applications where SACOG's not necessarily the lead agency in applying, but helping to support partnerships and advocate once those applications are submitted, advocating for funding for those projects. Members and partners can reach out with questions or requests for either technical assistance or letters of support at our grants email. It's grants@sacog.org. And then finally, we're continuing to monitor applications that are awarded funds. So as those announcements come out, we can learn from programs that were successful in getting funding and where we may have fallen short as a region. Just a quick update, the infra grants were announced last month. For those who applied to mega and rural grant programs, those will come later this year, hopefully in the next month. And then we're also watching the Safe Roads and Streets for All grant program. Those applications were due middle of last month, and so we'll watch for those announcements and keep you posted on timing. And as I said, just continuing to learn from the process as we go along here and focus on how to make our region the most competitive possible in those future grant rounds. And with that, happy to take any questions you might have.
Directors, any questions on any of that? Sabrina, excellent summary. Thank you very much. The number of bills that keep affecting local housing strategies and planning are many, and it's a challenge to keep on top of this, and we're grateful that you guys do it for us. Thanks. Okay. Any other matters that should be brought to everyone's attention from Director Corliss?
I just want to give a quick update and a reminder. Hopefully you got this in all your inboxes. I know this is a busy time of year. Valley Vision is doing a livability summit tomorrow at Sacramento State, which I have a number of board members attending. We're a presenting sponsor, so we were able to get you complimentary tickets. And we have a panel on the region's housing challenges with Chair Jennings, Director Gore. So that should be great. So if you're able to make it and you have a ticket, please do attend. As Director Stollard has mentioned, Valley Vision's been a really important partner for us all the way back to the original blueprint. So just working with them together on curating this conference has been a good partnership, and looking forward to tomorrow.
Very good. Anything else? All right, directors, any commentary for the good of the order? Okay, hearing none, I will just remind everybody that we'll meet again as this Policy and Innovation Committee on November 7th. Monday, 2022 at 10 a.m. You're welcome to join me here in the boardroom if you like, but we'll do it by Zoom again as well. And with that, we
Chair,
are.
I'll ask you one last reminder. That will be your last committee meeting of the year because, as a reminder, we're not doing December committees.
Okay.
And we have a special board meeting that I think is in your inboxes. Many of you have RSVP'd Thursday, December 1st, 9:30 a.m. So we're replacing the committees in December with a special board meeting last of the year to close out the year and to begin to recognize some of our retiring board members, of which we have a number this year. So please join us then. If you haven't RSVP'd to our board clerk, Lynette Espinoza, please do that. So November 7th will be your last Policy Innovation Committee meeting of the year.
Hey, James, I look forward to a year when we don't say goodbye to a lot of board members. I'm still hoping to get to know better some of the new ones we got last year.
Well, seeing you in person on November the 7th would be great. And we're really encouraging you to come in person December 1st as well.
I will buy the coffee. I'll buy the coffee for anybody that commits to come into the boardroom. All right, excellent. We are adjourned until November 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.